running an online merchandise business or running a merchandise business in general is not a piece of cake. It's not a walk in the park.
There are timed products. There are also timeless products. So, for example, if you win a game, there are jerseys specifically designed for this.
That's something you cannot plan for. It's unlike fashion, where you have a somewhat predictable future and forecast.
The consumer wants experiences. The consumer wants a sense of community, a sense of belonging. And this is quite strong, especially in the merchandising sector, I would assume.
What is our key asset, by the way? We thought maybe it's our technology, our infrastructure, our platform, etc., etc. And then realized, no, guys, it's primarily our relationship to sports fans.
Hello and welcome to the EGN Podcast. I'm your host, Efe von Thenen. For today's special episode, we are broadcasting from the great city of Hamburg. My guest today is Armand Farsi, head of DACH and Connected Commerce at Fanatics. Armand and I will talk about the exciting world of fan commerce, from utilizing innovative tech to a deep understanding of fan culture. We'll explore this industry from the perspective of Fanatics, the global leader in sports merchandising and licensing. So grab your favorite team jersey and let's get started. Armand, welcome to the show. Very happy to have you as part of this podcast. We know each other for quite some time now. You were part of a panel that I moderated at the e-commerce Berlin Expo event. I think it was last year. Time passes by so fast. So we had the managing director e-commerce at Borussia Dortmund. We had the CEO, managing director of Eventim Sports, Jens, with us. Yeah, so very happy to have you here in Hamburg. Normally we're in Berlin, but yeah, and you're a hamburger as well.
Yes, a hamburger. A short travel. Indeed, it was only an S-Bahn ride to get here instead of a train ride or a flight, like it was last time to Berlin, which was a train ride.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, as you said, from Hamburg, live here and work for a company called Fanatics that I think we will cover and discuss today in more depth. Been there for 5 years now, and before have always been in the digital retail and e-commerce industry. Joined actually this field in 2012, worked in the Bertelsmann Group for many years in different capacities, mainly in consulting and helping clients to grow
For Arvato, right?
Arvato, which is one of the Bertelsmann units. And we did a consulting team to help clients, brands, especially from the fashion industry, to grow their footprint in e-commerce. Back then, guys, and this is 12 years ago when I joined, when e-commerce was still kind of a new thing, and maybe some brands were still not even online with their own direct-to-consumer businesses. And initially started in a strategy consulting company called BCG. And that's what I do. And nowadays, as I said, with Fanatics, looking after our market here in Germany as a country manager, but also, and that's my second role, leading our activities with international retailers. So outside of the US, we have a few partnerships with leading retailers, and I'm also looking after that part of our business.
Armand, I'm humbled sitting across you and super curious what you're going to talk about today. Very nice to hear that you have a long history in e-commerce. When you say it like that, it sounds like you're super old, but you look very young still.
I'm 43 years old, but I take those flowers. Thank you, Efe.
Yeah, super nice. Tell us a little bit about Fanatics, because some of the people out there might not know you guys.
100%. I know Fanatics is not a household brand, especially in Germany. In the US, it's different. It's an American company. And today we consider ourselves a digital sports platform. So you can see there are 3 words in there. So it's digital, it's sports, and a platform. Yeah. It all initiated and started off our merchandise business. And I can go into more depth with that, but also talk about the latest and newer verticals and industries that we are building within our, let's say, group of companies.
Yeah.
The merchandise business itself is the idea that we come in as Fanatics and partner up with the world's leading sports clubs, leagues, federations. We are a licensee, so we acquire rights, and with those rights, we are enabled to design and produce products and also run the distribution channels. That's a bit technical, but in short, a distribution channel can be an online shop of the club or a brick and mortar store of the club, be it on high street or in a stadium. It can also be wholesaling products that we developed for that club. And all that combined, we call our vertical commerce model that has been kind of the root of this company and what we do. And to maybe give you a bit more of an example, what we do, for example, in Germany is work with the German Federation, Football Federation, the DFB, the Deutsche Fußballbund. And for the DFB, we obviously acquired the rights as well. And you all know the German football's national team jersey. That's, however, from Adidas. It's not from Fanatics. So that's a product we would buy, but then sell in the official DFB online shop or in stadium. In addition, however, we developed a wide range of products that did not exist before with the DFB crest and the logo. For the more casual fan, a different environment and situation, think about hoodies, T-shirts, etc., to expand the product offering that might not be offered through Adidas, which is a great, obviously, partner. And in addition to that, one of, I think, the key elements here was to not only extend the breadth of the product offering, but also the geographic reach. So not only offering these products in Germany, but with our infrastructure in our global merchandising business that we run, we can now reach fans anywhere from, all the way southeast of Asia to the US, etc., which can be interesting. Think about the US, we have the World Cup coming up in the US 26. And these are events that obviously do matter for a partner like a federation, a football federation. With the Euros, obviously the biggest event. It's now happening in our home.
I want to put a finger on one thing that you said. Being a global player, so soccer fans are not contained to, if you're a St. Pauli fan from Hamburg, you're in Hamburg, of course, you can always go visit their store and buy something, but you can be a St. Pauli fan from Nigeria, you know what I mean? So it's like very, very global. As a matter of fact, Armand, in the last 2 weeks, I had the fortune to sit in the VIP lounge at two football games, and I was in Bayern München stadium from Allianz Arena, and my brother-in-law saw that I'm there, and he's like, "Hey, can you get me some merch items and everything?" Because he's super curious about football. Of course, I had to visit the store. And the whole time I was thinking, like, what's behind all these products? It's actually not very. Sometimes it's not that straightforward with the licensing part, like how these products get developed. There are timed products. There are also timeless products. So, for example, if you win a game, there are jerseys specifically designed for this. So I think there are lots of intricacies about this particular segment of e-commerce. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And as you pointed out, spot on, it is quite complex if you look at it from, the outside perspective. When you walk through one of those stores, for example, with Bayern Munich, as an example, you see this wide array of products. And there's different ways on how to execute those products. One is you as the owner of the IP, in that case, the club, Bayern Munich, St. Pauli here from Hamburg. Actually, we are in St. Pauli right now. This studio is right nearby the stadium. You own the rights, so you can do whatever you think makes most sense. And many products are developed and sourced by the clubs themselves. Then they also can license away or sub-license their IP to others who say, hey, give me the license. I'm an expert in whatever, kids wear or bed linens, you name it. And with that license, the licensee can then develop these products, and then distribute them.
Yeah.
That's what we do, in essence. However, in addition to just the product license, and I think that kind of was a little bit new to the industry and more disruptive, we also started to run the distribution business or the selling, the POS, be it offline but also online, in the colors and the brand of the club on their behalf. Because let's face it, I mean, you've been in this industry for long enough. I have, the audience probably as well. Running an online merchandise business or running a merchandise business in general is not a piece of cake. It's not a walk in the park. You need people in-house or with a partner like us, and there's others as well out there. You need, obviously, the budget. With the budget, obviously, you will buy product, and that's where things get a bit more, let's say, tricky. In the case of Bayern Munich, maybe not as tricky because they tend to usually win the Meisterschaft here in the Bundesliga. But winning a title is always a huge demand driver, or a relegation would obviously be the opposite, but that's something you cannot plan for. It's unlike fashion, where you have a somewhat predictable future and forecast, where in sports, I mean, to a certain extent, you kind of know if you're in first league or third league, but you don't really know which title, which championship, which cup you might win. And that brings about a big challenge to your stock and your buys, because you're always either overbuying and left with overstock that you then have to sell at low margins, or you're not well enough stocked for, that moment that might happen. And that's true for the clubs, but that's also true for the retailers. Think about a sports retailer or an online sports retailer. How much of which club do you buy?
Yeah.
And in our case, we take that risk on our side, on our P&L, on our balance sheet, because we say, here's your licensing fee that we pay to the clubs, the partners, the leagues, etc., and we take that burden on our side. And it works only when you obviously have a big enough portfolio to balance the risk.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, we would wish for we always win, no matter who really wins. But that's obviously not the truth. It's not the case. But the more variety you have in your portfolio, the more you can weigh those and balance those risks, and the more you can succeed in this market. So that's kind of the merchandise business that we developed. Well, it was 10, 12, 13 years ago when our CEO and founder, owner, Michael Rubin, took over a company and made it to the Fanatics vertical merchandise business, commerce business that we know of today.
Yeah.
And then over time and growing tremendously with the global footprint, we realized, hey, look, guys, what is our key asset, by the way? We thought maybe it's our technology, our infrastructure, our platform, et cetera, and then realized, no, guys, it's primarily our relationship to sports fans.
Yeah.
So we pride ourselves in having millions and millions of relationships with sports fans who have bought a product with us, thereby expressing their fandom to a certain team or club. And then we looked at the industry and we asked ourselves, okay, what could these fans need where there probably isn't a perfect solution yet? And where do we think, with the assets that we have, can we try to make the experience for the fan better? And that's kind of what I said earlier. We come from a vertical commerce merchandise background. That's kind of the core of the business, but then added new business units where we think we can make a better fan experience and provide a better experience to fans out there in the world. And that's in addition to the merchandise business, now our collectibles business. So think about trading cards and other collectibles. We added a betting and gaming unit where we launched in the US our sportsbook and our betting app, so you can bet on sports results. We have two more that we just launched last year, which is one called Fanatics Live, which is essentially live shopping connected or social commerce platform, where you especially, and I'll come to that later.
This is in the US probably.
This is still in the US, but hey, I mean, we just launched, and we obviously are never satisfied with the status quo, so more to come. And last but not least, the last of our 5 pillars initiatives called Fanatics Events, where our owner, Michael Rubin, whoever knows him or Googles him, he's a quiet, dynamic, and active guy who's really out there in the market, on the street, and meets fans, meets people, and listens, and understands, hey, wait a second, there are these huge events for fandom and culture. Think about Comic Con as an example in the US, and others as well. And then realizing, hold on, what is there for the sports fan? Most passionate fans in the world are usually also sports fans, but is there one event, one platform where you bring together everything that's exciting for a sports fan apart from just the game? And what else can you do?
Yeah.
So that's where last year then this new pillar was born called Fanatics Events. We're hosting our first event now in a few months in New York City, where we will bring thousands of sports fans together to experience a kind of different environment where you have world-class athletes. You have Tom Brady, you have NBA superstar Kevin Durant, you have Hulk Hogan from the WWE, etc. You have all the leagues, you have different collectors coming, you have product drops, entertainment. So it's kind of a mix of culture, sports, fandom to create great few days that people can attend and then walk away and just had a great time. And that's kind of where the mindset of our company is really looking at how can we make something new or better that's not there yet or can be invented with the assets that we have. And the assets is, quite obvious. We have these great relationships with the leagues, the partners, the clubs, etc. It's about, many hundreds of these. At the same time, we have great relationships with athletes. So we do also have rights to athletes' memorabilia. Think about, actual game-worn jerseys, signed items, etc. Yeah. We just announced our first big signing for Europe, which is with Harry Kane. So we do the memorabilia piece for the striker of the England FA or Bayern Munich. You might have seen him in the stadium. And that's, in essence, why we now say we're not only a merchandise company anymore, but we're a digital sports platform. Everything we do is also has a digital component. Everything is sports, usually. Yeah. And it's somewhat a platform play in itself.
Armand, you did a perfect introduction in terms of like what the company does. It's for me, you touched upon a couple of areas which I wanted to investigate a little bit anyway. So, for example, you mentioned social commerce. It's quite big. We have TikTok Shop launching in Germany quite soon. We have, you mentioned sense of community. A couple of months ago at the expo, I did the opening speech, and I was mentioning this fatigue that the German buyers have these days, where they're sick of scrolling through 2,500 products at e-commerce shops that look exactly the same across the board. So the consumer wants experiences. The consumer wants a sense of community, a sense of belonging. And this is quite strong, especially in the merchandising sector, I would assume, because like you have a strong bond to your soccer team. You have a strong bond to the products you buy because you're probably buying them. You're going to be gifting them to someone. And then depending on the development, you have also, as you mentioned, like timed articles that will not be available, maybe exclusive collections that will not be available forever. So I think this sense of belonging is very powerful. And I'm very curious to investigate how, for example, when you look at the German e-commerce, 53%, Amazon has 53% share in all e-commerce transactions. So it's typically over 80% of the buyers go to Amazon for a product search. Could you maybe like shed some light? Why wouldn't I go to the fan as a fan? Let's say I'm a Bayern Munich fan. Why wouldn't I go to their website directly and go to you instead?
Well, you can choose wherever is most convenient for you, and obviously there's different fan types, and you can segment that. There is probably always the question of, for the fan, what's my relationship with that vendor, call it, with that platform? What's the availability of the product I'm looking for? What's the price? What's the different service elements that are being offered, et cetera, et cetera. So in the case of Bayern Munich, obviously most fans in Germany would shop, I would assume, with the Bayern Munich store. It's a great experience.
They have the most loyal fan base, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a great experience. The team does a great job in running an awesome shop. So definitely. And then you mentioned the Amazon experience, etc. So again, there's different type of customers, and what we are trying to do, and that's a constant evolution, we're never ready and never done, is just understanding what is the best for which fan segment and have an offering. Do we have it now? Of course not for every fan out there. Will we have it in the future? Again, we'll never be ready, and this is a constant evolution on which we're working to be offering something. And I think this Fanatics Live initiative is probably a good example of how to investigate new opportunities outside of the classical, let's say, digital retail experience, where we're bringing in new ideas, new approaches, etc. But again, digital commerce is so broad and so big now. It's not just a niche anymore where you have that specific, best practice and that works for that customer base, because the customer base is so broad. Yeah. And in the case of sports, you mentioned soccer. We don't only do football, as we would say here, but also the U.S. sports, but things like, golf or rugby or Formula One. So
hockey,
or the, NHL, etc. So we partner with all these, and there's take Formula One, for example. We just had the Miami Grand Prix, and that's a great opportunity for fandom as well, because you can have really cool products around Miami, right? And the Miami design, look and feel, etc. Floridian and a bit tropical. So that's moments that we definitely want to benefit from and provide something to the fan, which we in this case do with this special capsule or range for the Miami Grand Prix. And in another area is just collaborations. I mean, that's kind of a widespread theme now, but we also obviously engage in this, trying to bring great brands, great assets together to create something that's not existed before. For example, we just had in the US a huge campaign, and kind of wanted to break the internet with that, with Travis Scott, one of the key, I mean, I'm too old probably for that, but he's one of the hip-hop superstars, and together with him and the colleges in the US, we designed and developed a product capsule specifically around the Travis Scott brand called Cactus Jack, et cetera, et cetera. So those are things that we do. And again, to your question, I think that adds to the variety, to the offering that you would otherwise probably not found and not have.
What I find very special about you is that you represent a global company. You did a fairly humble opening, but you guys have 100 million customers, right? So as far as I know, maybe even more. Am I right with that?
We are a private company, not public yet. So we'd usually not comment publicly on a lot of numbers. But if that is a number that you have researched, I'm sure you did your research correctly.
Yeah, let's assume that is correct. Seeing that you're present in many markets, you're responsible for the DACH region, as far as I know, and also for connected commerce in general. So let's compare the German landscape in merchandising licensing to, let's say, more developed markets such as the US. Do you see a lot of differences, or would you argue that the US is like 4, 5, 10 years ahead in terms of certain areas?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, in certain areas, of course, there are differences, and in the e-commerce business, there are nuances. But I wouldn't necessarily say that everything is 5 years ahead. I think it's sometimes even more interesting to see what's happening from the Chinese side of things, where obviously the live shopping element, the social commerce, etc., has been around for many years already. And so that's interesting as well. But on the specifics of the German market, and to your point, working for a global company, you definitely notice nuances. And the US, for example, is a big country, just in physical distances, and hence the customer tolerance with ship times is different than Germany, for example, where you have a smaller, dense country where you can reach customers much faster than, for example, in the US. So in the US, the customers have, I would say, on average, a different openness towards innovation and new ideas.
Yeah.
Whereas in the especially German football fan culture, there's a bit more of the authenticity element, the grassroots fans, the strong fan base. Where, for example, take collaborations. It's a more delicate topic, I would think, in the German football fan culture than it is when you do a collaboration, for example, for a NFL team, etc. The fans there might be more open to those type of ideas. And apart from that, you can just see by the numbers and the metrics, Germany tends to be a strong converting country. At the same time, you do have, and that's no secret, you do have different return rates across the board, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think, apart from that, it's probably more interesting to see what's on the sports side. And I think there you have the culture of the fan that's slightly different.
You serve the German national team as well, right? So
Exactly.
can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So the federations business, as we would call it, is very much driven by events such as the Euros and the World Cup.
Yeah.
Men and women. And that might be quite straightforward. However, it is a very complex operational execution challenge because you have a quite flat revenue curve until you reach those monumental moments. With this year's Euros in country, obviously, we have that one big moment coming ahead of us. And in that moment, your revenue, your demand, your sales, etc., spike by many, many, many X. And whoever runs an online business knows what that means when you think of, fulfillment, when you think of shifts, when you think of space, when you think of buys, when you think of this and this and that. And that's also true and a bit different in our business to other, let's say, fashion e-commerce businesses, when you think about a jersey that has a name on the back and a number, name and number. And for those who are not aware, usually these products are made on demand. So they're not pre-produced. We wouldn't have a von Thenen number 10 sitting there waiting for you to order it, but would produce it. Same goes for player names. So a Musiala or a Toni Kroos or whoever player you're ordering, usually we would produce that on demand, and that's across the same across the industry.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting, these names and numbers that you put on the back, these are specific, we call it components. Mm-hmm. They are also a license. Not everybody can go and produce them, and we print it on the official jersey. There's a company, for example, for the DFB called 11 Team Sports, our good friends, who produce this specific product, and we source from them. Now, why do I say that? Because you have a very, modest demand throughout the year until the new kit is presented. Just happened in March, the new jersey, and the tournament happens. And then
so you have these spikes.
You have these spikes, and then apart from the fulfillment, etc., how much letter D's do you buy? How many letters? That's very much in the detail. Yeah. But the moment of truth, because when you want to order your von Thenen, and we don't have, a capital T. Well, it's all capitals, by the way. But if we don't have the T in stock, then obviously your order needs to wait longer than if we had it. So those are challenges that we don't have in typical fashion or apparel businesses, and that we don't have with typical club and league businesses, but more with federations where you have these big monumental events where everything must be perfect for a few weeks, and then the demand fades
Yeah.
again. And what makes things, in our case, more interesting this summer is that obviously it's not only the German football national team, we also do the same for the French national team, for the English national team, the Italian national team, and above all, for the UEFA as well. So when during the Euros, you walk around in any of the host cities, and Hamburg being one, you usually have fan zones and in the stadium, booth from the UEFA, from the official host of the Euros, and those merchandise stands booths are also run by ourselves during that tournament, which was also a monumental effort. Shout out to our in-venue retail team who is preparing and working on that. So that's kind of closing the circle online, offline, and during tournaments for federations.
How do you you mentioned like there will be spikes in demand and all these things, and it's not very straightforward, but do you have mechanisms to anticipate demand so that you can be best prepared for this? Or like in what way you take advantage?
I mean, we're not rolling the dice, but
it's a rhetorical question because you have to. And also, how do you utilize data that you gather from your customers to help them, help serve them better?
Yeah, great question, and you answered it almost yourself. It's, nothing can be done without data. That's the starting point. What data do we have? We obviously have historical tournament data, and that's also something that's an asset, right? When you have run tournaments and you have insights into not only the top line. I mean, the top line prediction and forecast is difficult in itself, but you would also need to predict, as I said, how many of the home jerseys you need, away jerseys you need, which name, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where it gets more difficult. And it all starts with data from your own trading history, but then you also look into other tools that we have. And then we have to be, quite honest, we can never, ever, and if anybody could, I would pay him $1 billion that I don't have, but I would have. If anybody could predict the exact sales number for that specific day, and that's a daily activity, by the way. It's not like we need a monthly number here. And so it needs, in addition to all the data, a lot of, we could say, social listening, and also the sentiment in market, where you add a qualitative element to it, and a lot of reasoning and benchmarking, etc., to come up with a forecast. So it's a mix of different tools, mechanism, techniques, and data, but we don't solely trust whatever the machine spits out, if you will, but also add our qualitative assessment to it, knowing, what we see. And for example, when Tony Kroos decided to rejoin the national team, that's obviously a huge announcement that in the data you don't see, because A, he wasn't playing, and B, last time he did play, he was not as probably hot as he is now. So these are
so you do connect the dots yourself.
You must, you must.
Yeah. Okay, super interesting. And I think one area we haven't touched upon is also the platform, the technical background behind all these things, like the engine that carries this weight. Because when you have a big game, like a big game coming up, and all of a sudden you see this spike in orders in e-commerce, and it's one thing to also have like a steady flow, which you see in many e-commerce businesses. It's another to have like stagnant going, and then all of a sudden this massive spike, and then how do you make sure that your platform doesn't crash?
Yeah, I mean, we could go into a lot of technical detail, but in a nutshell or high-level view. So we have our own bespoke, custom-developed platform that we run all our almost 1,000 online shops on.
Yeah.
We pride ourselves in the fact that it's never gone down. Yeah. Given that, the huge number of stores, again, back to the portfolio, we can basically deal with any spike, and we're talking about Super Bowl wins, etc. So that's in itself records, etc. So the backbone is very much self-developed and very much integrated with all the different, take the shop platform, our order management system, etc. That's all kind of our backbone that enables this e-commerce execution that we've just been discussing.
Yeah. I asked this question because we recently had CNA, big brand, as part of the podcast. We talked about headless commerce and how decoupling of the front end and the back end. It was, I think, the most technical episode we ever had, but it's super important for e-commerce businesses, especially even social media influencers. They do a campaign and all of a sudden they have like 20, 30,000 people just going into a landing page. It does make a difference. But more importantly, I want to take this opportunity today and ask you about the biggest trends you see that we should be expecting to see in German e-commerce, especially coming from your angle. Right now, when you go on LinkedIn, you'll see a lot of buzzwords going around about AI-based avatars. How do we trust AI avatars, or how do we utilize AI in content generation? How do we combine different experiences into one? And just want to ask you, what are your top 3 trends that you've observed? And again, with the mind, keeping in mind coming from your angle, representing your segment.
Yeah, let me try to answer that from 2 different angles. One is a very behind the curtains, what does a retailer, vendor, company do, and what are the trends there?
Yeah.
And the other angle would be, what do the customers realize? So I think from a customer perspective, it's quite clear. And it's not to underestimate the impact of the Chinese, call it super apps platforms, Temu and Shein. And that's something that I think will be hotter and hotter over time, where I'm very sure, not in the very far future, the regulators, they're always laggards in this, right? They have some delay, but they're also looking into this now and seeing, where do we have to just enforce the local laws? Because as we all know, these platforms are circumventing laws. And in our specific case, these platforms do play a role because there's so much ambush and fake stuff on there where the customer is actually being fooled. So that's from a customer angle, becoming more and more a relevant force in the German e-commerce industry.
And they are heavily utilizing AI as well. They have the factory to customer approach, but also they're utilizing AI to send out what they are doing. For example, something that Amazon doesn't necessarily do, personalized mailings based on your behavior on the platform. So you've taken a look at certain products, you like certain colors, whatever, and then you get personalized email campaigns, which I've been an Amazon user for quite some time, and you don't necessarily see this.
Exactly, and that's what I meant by the 2 different angles. So the other angle is, what do companies do to make use of the new technologies? What are the trends there? And I mean, no surprise, AI definitely, and we are also deeply engaged in, understanding what are the key, features and use cases where AI can help our teams, get rid of some maybe work that's not so much fun and takes a lot of time and not creating too much value, and let the machine do it, and you spend your time on things that are delivering more benefit and a bigger upside. So that's definitely from the company side, for sure. All companies out there, including ourselves, are more and more embracing the opportunities with artificial intelligence. And then on the consumer side, in Germany, I'm sure the force coming from these Chinese platforms will more and more play a role in how this ecosystem will develop over time.
How about personalization? It's huge in merchandising also, right?
It is, yeah. I mean, I just mentioned you can print your name on basically anything.
Yeah.
That's a very true personalization, if you will. You can also have, I mean, obviously, if you are a Bayern fan, I should not be sending you Dortmund emails, which is obviously, from our perspective, very clear and
very emotional,
very obvious use case where we have to personalize and customize and understand what, a fan of what team or club or team sports are you and whatnot. And sometimes there are overlays where the fan of the one team can be a fan of another team, and there are rivalries and et cetera, et cetera.
Armand, what I'm super curious about is also the interplay between ticketing, selling merchandise, working with other clubs. It's just like there's obviously event-based. There's a game coming up. You're selling jerseys in preparation. How do you see the interplay between brands and other ticketing platforms also? Do you work with them? Let's give the example of Eventim Sports. How do you cooperate with other players and other soccer clubs and ticketing platforms and in preparation of soccer games, for example? Let's take that as an example.
Yeah. No, a great question. And it makes so much sense to do what the fan wants.
Yeah.
So we definitely test and partner with different players in the industry. And ticketing would be one example where we have had partnerships in the past where we would see what the appetite for the fan is. And at the moment, these customer journeys tend to not be as straightforward, where every customer who buys a jersey wants to buy a ticket as well, or vice versa. If you're going to a game and buying a ticket, you don't always want a jersey, so that might come across sometimes a bit redundant to the fan. So, again, as I said in the past, we've had partnerships, and that's part of our mindset, just trying and exploring what makes sense.
In a way, cross-selling. Hey, you've bought a ticket. You might need a jersey, or you might need ABC, whatever. Going to that game.
Again, as I said, as long as it's not too invasive, I think that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And along those lines, we are also obviously definitely open to test and learn.
I think one area is also quite huge. Working with soccer players who are or any representative from teams that are influencers, on social media, big presence. How do you see this? How do you see, from your perspective, the cooperation with influencers in this segment?
Well, I mean, in itself, every athlete is becoming, or many of them, look at Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the biggest influencers in the world by the sheer number of his followers. So, as I said earlier, we do run an athlete relationship program where we partner with these great sports stars and do things together that the fans might want. And that can be usually around merchandise and products. And in addition, other things, just like I said, there's Fanatics events where we bring these players to the fans. Or we've also announced last year a huge cooperation with Make-A-Wish, with a Make-A-Wish Foundation, where we make wishes come true for children with special circumstances and need, who can meet then their life hero in real life. And that's also something where these influencers, if you want to call them influencers, do play a pivotal role.
Armand, it's been a great talk. We've touched upon a lot of things, how you work with your customers, how you work with other players in sports merchandising and licensing, and how this might be a bit more sophisticated than what you see on your websites or any soccer or any team that you come in contact with. We've talked about the challenges of the industry, opportunities, and being a global player, you were able to compare different markets to Germany. So I've learned a lot personally. Thank you so much. And unless you have any additional comments, I think we will end it there.
No, we can end it there. It's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. I'm sure you know the book. So yeah, you summarized it well. It might look quite simple from the outside, but behind the curtains, it's a quite complex endeavor to run such a business. And we're happy to further grow in this field.
Yeah, I think the fact that it is sophisticated makes you an attractive offer for clubs to simplify some of the sophisticated processes as well. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Efe.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the E-commerce Germany News Podcast. If you did, make sure to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, and follow us on our channels. Feel free to also recommend this podcast to your contacts and friends that may want to know more about e-commerce, digital marketing, and success stories. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and see you on the next episode.